Mark was in love, but life didn't love him back. He lost his job, his savings, and finally, her. Julia said she needed a man with a future and walked out the door. But Mark never imagined that losing everything was the very thing that would lead him to a man who would change his life forever. It always starts with silence, not the kind you hear, but the kind you feel in your chest when you know something's about to change. Mark wasn't special, at least not to the world. Just another man in his 20s, living paycheck to paycheck, trying to build a future with the woman he thought would be by his side forever. Her name was Julia, beautiful, sharp, ambitious enough for both of them. She said she loved him, but love, as Mark would learn, has conditions, and when he came home with an empty box and a severance letter, laid off, broke and scared, she didn't hug him. She didn't ask how he felt. She just asked one question: "What are we going to do now, Mark?" But her tone wasn't curiosity, it was disappointment, judgment. And 3 days later, she was gone, left a note, some folded clothes, and the echo of a door that didn't shut gently. He didn't cry, not right away. Some people don't cry when things break, they just go quiet. So he got up and signed up to volunteer at a hospital. He didn't even know why. Maybe it was to stay busy. Maybe it was to feel useful. Or maybe fate had a seat saved for him in room 211, where a quiet old man was waiting to meet someone just like Mark. And that meeting, that silent, ordinary moment, would change everything. Mark didn't expect much from the hospital. He wasn't a doctor, he wasn't trained, just a guy in a volunteer vest, pushing carts, delivering flowers, refilling water jugs. He didn't speak unless spoken to, didn't ask questions, didn't draw attention. But people noticed him, quietly. The elderly patients smiled when he entered the room. The nurses nodded with a kind of respect he hadn't felt in months. And then there was Mr. Ellis, room 211, always silent, always alone. An old man with eyes too sharp for his age, lying in a bed with monitors humming gently beside him. Nobody visited, no flowers, no cards, just books, unopened, and one chair, always empty. When Mark first entered that room, he said, "Hey there, Mr. Ellis, need anything?" The old man didn't answer, didn't move, didn't even blink, but he heard him. Mark came back the next day, and the next. He didn't force conversation. He just sat, changed the water, adjusted the blinds, sometimes just existed in silence, until one morning, a voice broke through. "You know you don't get paid for this, right?" Mark looked up, startled. Ellis was staring at him. Eyes clear, voice calm. "Yes, sir," Mark replied. "I'm not here for that." Ellis nodded, almost amused, and that was the start. A man who had pushed everyone away, had let one in, not because Mark tried, but because he didn't. In the days that followed, they spoke more. Not much, but enough. Mark learned Ellis was once a powerful man, a businessman, investor, traveler. But after his wife died and his children stopped calling, he simply faded from the world. Mark never asked about money. He never pried. He listened. And Ellis? He watched. He watched how Mark treated the nurses, how he picked up dropped pens without being asked, how he waited for others to speak before he spoke. Ellis saw something in him, not potential but character, the kind of thing you can't fake, the kind of thing people only show when they believe no one's watching. But Ellis was, every day, and Mark was passing a test he didn't know existed. Time passed slowly, then all at once, Mark found rhythm in the hospital. Routine gave him peace. He still didn't have much. No job offers, no car, no apartment of his own. But he had something else, purpose. And strangely, that was enough. He stopped checking his phone every hour, stopped hoping Julia would message, until one day, she did. A simple message. "Hey, I was thinking about you." Mark stared at it for hours. He didn't know what to say. Didn't know if he should say anything. But eventually he replied. They met at a small cafe near the hospital. Mark was nervous. Julia was radiant. She talked about her new job, her fitness coach, her new place, but her eyes scanned him, his clothes, his face and his hands. "You look different," she said. Mark smiled. "I feel different." They laughed, talked, remembered. It felt familiar. So he invited her for a walk, and as they passed by the hospital, she looked up. "You work here now." "I volunteer," he said, "mostly with long-term patients." She nodded slowly. "Sounds noble." But something changed in her tone. That afternoon, she asked to visit the hospital, said she wanted to see the kind of work he was doing. Mark hesitated, but said yes. He took her through the halls, and then into room 211. Mr. Ellis was awake, sitting upright, and the moment Julia walked in, he didn't blink. He studied her, the way she smiled, the way her hand lingered on Mark's arm. She spoke with a sweetness Mark hadn't heard in months. Ellis said little, but his eyes followed everything. When they left the room, Julia asked, "Who is he?" "Just a patient," Mark replied. "He's been here a while. He looks important." She smiled. "Old money?" Mark shrugged. "I don't know. Doesn't matter to me." Julia paused. "Well, it damn what it should." Over the next week, Julia returned. She brought coffee for the nurses, left flowers at Ellis's bedside, laughed louder, touched Mark more. She became present, but not real, and Ellis knew. He saw how she looked when Mark wasn't watching. He noticed the subtle flashes of boredom when no one talked about money. He watched and waited. And one night, alone with Mark, he asked, "Is she back because she loves you or because she thinks I'm rich?" Mark didn't answer. He couldn't. But in that moment, something inside Ellis shifted. Because he had seen this before, greed in silk gloves. Mark believed people could change, that maybe pain could reset a person, that maybe love, once broken, could still be rebuilt. He wanted to believe Julia came back for him, not for comfort, not for money, but for something real. And for a while it worked. They had dinner. They watched old movies. She laughed at his jokes again. She held his hand like nothing had changed. Mark didn't ask questions. He didn't want to ruin it. But Mr. Ellis was quiet, quieter than usual. His eyes tracked Julia with growing concern. He asked fewer questions, but when he spoke, it was pointed. "She smiles too much now," Ellis said once. "Smiles don't cost anything, but they're never free." Mark shrugged. "I think she just missed me." Ellis gave a slow nod, but his silence screamed louder than words. Then, one morning, Ellis called Mark alone. His voice was soft, but steady. "You've been good to me," he said. "More than anyone in a long time." Mark tried to wave it off. "I didn't do anything special." But Ellis interrupted. "You showed up every day, with nothing to gain. That's more than most people ever do." Mark swallowed hard. Then Ellis leaned forward. "What would you do with a second chance, Mark?" Mark didn't understand. He just nodded slowly. Ellis closed his eyes. "I'm making arrangements. Quiet ones. Don't ask questions. Just keep being you." Mark didn't sleep well that night. A week later, Mr. Ellis passed away. No dramatic final breath. No farewell speech. Just silence. Room 211 was empty. Mark stood in the hallway for hours, unable to move. Julia held his hand, but said nothing. The funeral was quiet. Only 4 people showed up. 2 nurses, 1 hospital director, and Mark. Julia came too, dressed in black, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. But Mark noticed something. She wasn't sad, she was curious. She whispered as they walked to the car, "Do you think he left anything, like, for the hospital?" Mark just stared ahead. Then came the call. From a law office downtown. Mark was named in the will. They asked him to come in and alone. Julia insisted she wait outside. Mark walked in expecting nothing, just a gesture, a kind word, maybe a letter. What he got was everything. Mr. Ellis had no living heirs, no wife, no children, no close friends, but he had one thing, a man who sat beside him when no one else would. And so, in pen and ink, on the final page of his life, he left it all to Mark. Mark left the office in silence. The folder in his hands felt heavier than the world. Inside, bank accounts, deeds, investments. A final letter from Mr. Ellis. "To the only man who treated me like I still mattered, I leave what I no longer need. Use it wisely, live fully, and never stop seeing people for who they are." Mark sat in his car for almost an hour. Then he drove, not home, but to Julia's apartment. She opened the door with a practiced smile. "Hey, you okay?" He didn't speak, just held up the folder. She took it slowly, flipping through the pages. Her eyes widened. Silence. Then, softly, "Is this yours?" Mark nodded once. Julia stepped forward. "Mark, I don't even know what to say." Her voice trembled. Her hands reached for his. "I'm just so proud of you. I knew you had something great in you. I never stopped believing." Mark pulled his hands away. His voice was calm. "You left when I had nothing. Don't come back now that I have everything." Julia froze. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I loved you," he said, "and you loved the idea of a man who could give you something." She stammered, "Mark, it's not like that." "It is." He took a breath. "But I'm not angry, just grateful." "Grateful?" she asked. "You showed me exactly who you are, and you gave me the chance to walk away from it." He turned, left her standing in the doorway, speechless. This time, he was the one who closed the door. A week later, Mark moved to a quiet house with trees, big windows, and space to breathe. He didn't post about it. He didn't brag. But people noticed something. The man who once had nothing now walked like someone who had everything, and not because of money, but because he'd finally let go of someone who never deserved to stay. Some people think fortune is about numbers, bank accounts, assets, checks with too many zeros to count. But Mark learned something else. Fortune is silence, peace, a life where no one takes from you, because you've stopped giving to those who don't deserve. He didn't buy a sports car. He didn't disappear to a beach in another country. He kept volunteering quietly, room by room. He donated anonymously to the hospital, paid for 3 scholarships in nursing, and every week he visited room 211, still empty, but never forgotten. He framed the final letter from Mr. Ellis, hung it on the wall, not because of the money, but because someone saw him before anyone else did. People asked what changed his life. Some said it was the inheritance, others said it was luck. Julia would say it was a mistake. But Mark, he'd say it started the day someone listened, and the day he finally walked away. Because sometimes the richest people in the world are the ones who were once broken and chose to heal with grace. If this story moved you, subscribe to Beyond Fortune, where real people meet real turning points, because you never know when your quietest moment might become the start of everything.